Some of the best things I ever did was when I had them believe it was their idea.
For nearly 7 decades, Jerry Lewis stood at the heart of American entertainment, witnessing Hollywood's inner workings from a front row seat. From his rise alongside Dean Martin as one half of the most successful comedy duo of their era to his later years as a movie star, director, and longtime host of the Muscular Dystrophy Association telethons, Lewis crossed paths with virtually every major figure in show business. Unlike many stars of his generation, Lewis earned a reputation for refusing to quietly accept the racial prejudices that were deeply embedded in Hollywood and Las Vegas during the Golden Age. Growing up as the Jewish son of vaudeville performers in Newark, he understood what it felt like to be viewed as an outsider. That perspective shaped the way he viewed the entertainment industry throughout his life.
And they really believe we're looking to sabotage them.
When Lewis teamed up with Dean Martin in 1946, the pair quickly became one of the biggest acts in America. Their success brought them into constant contact with the most powerful names in Hollywood. Lewis paid close attention to what he saw behind the scenes, especially the way black performers were often treated despite their immense talent and popularity. His lifelong friendship with Sammy Davis Jr. gave him an even deeper understanding of the racial barriers that existed throughout the industry. Davis trusted Lewis with stories that many others never heard, and those experiences stayed with him for decades. In 2005, Lewis finally shared many of those memories in his memoir, Dean and Me, A Love Story.
You do it in a dictaphone? How do you do?
If I tell you, you'll be doing it.
Rather than protecting old friends or preserving Hollywood myths, he spoke openly about racial tensions, disagreements, and the hidden behavior of stars whose private actions often contradicted their public images. Most importantly, Jerry Lewis was willing to name names and tell the stories others preferred to keep buried. Jerry Lewis spent decades watching Hollywood's biggest stars both on and off the screen. What stayed with him were not the polished public performances, but the private moments that revealed who people really were when they thought nobody was paying attention. Some of the stories Lewis later discussed came from public records and published accounts. Others came from conversations with actors, crew members, and industry insiders who had witnessed behavior that never made its way into official Hollywood history. Lewis believed that many stars carefully protected their reputations while hiding attitudes that contradicted the images audiences adored.
You know, you have to respect the opinions and the points of view of those that are involved.
According to Lewis, some of the most troubling examples were not the openly controversial figures everyone expected. Instead, they were actors whose careers were built on charm, integrity, and likability. Their public personas suggested decency and fairness, while their private views often told a very different story. The names Lewis discussed were not the obvious villains of Hollywood history. They were the stars audiences trusted, the faces associated with heroism, honor, and traditional American values. Lewis argued that the gap between their public image and private behavior was far wider than most fans ever realized. Among those figures was actor Randolph Scott, a man who spent decades embodying the honorable Western hero. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, Scott became one of Hollywood's most reliable leading men, starring in films that helped define the Western genre. His calm presence, Southern manners, and understated style earned him a loyal audience and a reputation as one of the industry's true gentlemen. Away from the screen, Scott also built significant wealth through business ventures and real estate investments. By the time he retired in 1962, he was among the most financially successful actors of his generation. Lewis encountered Scott frequently during Hollywood's golden years and came away with a different impression than the one presented to the public.
Some of our best customers are our enemies.
Behind the image of the courteous Southern gentleman, Lewis believes Scott retained many of the racial attitudes common in the segregated South where he was raised. Growing up in North Carolina during the early 20th century, Scott carried those beliefs into Hollywood, where, according to Lewis and others who knew him, they remained largely unchanged throughout his career. According to accounts that Jerry Lewis discussed over the years, Randolph Scott's conservative beliefs extended far beyond politics. Industry stories and later recollections from people who worked around him described a man who remained deeply attached to the racial attitudes of the South in which he was raised. While Scott rarely expressed those views publicly, colleagues claimed his private behavior often revealed a very different side from the polished gentleman audiences admired on screen. That contrast fascinated Lewis. Scott had built an entire career around playing honorable, decent men, yet critics and observers argued that his private attitudes did not always reflect the values his characters represented. Unlike more outspoken figures of the era, Scott's opinions were often hidden beneath impeccable manners and a carefully maintained public image.
Well, then you have to play that game and say to them, well, you may have a point, and now you do exactly as you choose to do, but let them think you're doing it their way.
The contradiction became even more striking when biographers later explored Scott's close personal relationship with fellow actor Cary Grant during the 1930s and 1940s. While Scott expected understanding and discretion regarding aspects of his own private life, Lewis believed he was less willing to extend that same understanding to others seeking acceptance and equal treatment. To Lewis, that inconsistency reflected a larger pattern that existed throughout Hollywood. A friend later recalled Lewis saying that Scott spent decades portraying one of the most honorable men in Western films while privately holding beliefs rooted in an older America. In Lewis's view, audiences rarely questioned the difference because Scott's charm and elegance made those contradictions easy to overlook. At number 4 was William Holden, one of the most respected leading men of his generation. Known for classics such as Sunset Boulevard, Stalag 17, and Network, Holden built a reputation as the embodiment of integrity, strength, and quiet American masculinity. His performances earned critical acclaim, including an Academy Award, and made him one of Hollywood's most trusted stars. Jerry Lewis crossed paths with Holden throughout the 1950s and 1960s and observed him both publicly and privately. According to Lewis, the image audiences saw was not always the complete picture.
It wastes time, though, doesn't it?
Yes, it's time-consuming and it's unfortunate, but people in the theatrical world are supposed to be neurotic.
Over time, memoirs, interviews, and recollections from contemporaries suggested that Holden sometimes expressed views about race that stood in sharp contrast to the moral, principled characters he portrayed on screen, creating yet another gap between Hollywood image and private reality. According to stories shared by colleagues and industry insiders, William Holden's struggles with alcoholism often revealed sides of his personality that remained hidden behind his polished public image. Friends, co-stars, and crew members who witnessed him during periods of heavy drinking later claimed that he sometimes expressed attitudes and language that sharply contradicted the honorable characters he portrayed on screen. These accounts described a pattern that, according to those who knew him, appeared repeatedly over the years, rather than as isolated incidents.
Anything else you want to?
No.
So we're finished. Sure, thank you.
While Holden carefully maintained a reputation for dignity and professionalism in public, critics argued that his private conduct occasionally painted a different picture. Part of the controversy surrounding Holden stemmed from the social circles in which he moved. Throughout much of his career, he maintained close relationships with influential conservative figures in Hollywood, including longtime friend Ronald Reagan. Although Holden never became publicly associated with some of Hollywood's most outspoken political organizations, he often occupied the same social and professional environments where those views circulated. One production frequently mentioned in later recollections was the 1955 film Picnic, which starred Holden alongside Kim Novak. Years after the film's release, some crew members described Holden as distant and dismissive toward certain workers behind the scenes. These stories contrasted sharply with the warm, relatable image audiences associated with him.
You know, it seems like we haven't seen each other for 20 years.
For Jerry Lewis, that contrast was especially disappointing. Holden had become one of Hollywood's most recognizable symbols of integrity and decency. Lewis reportedly believed that the gap between Holden's screen persona and the behavior described by colleagues represented one of the clearest examples of how Hollywood could manufacture an image that audiences embraced as reality. As one associate later recalled, Lewis often felt that Holden was so convincing as an actor that millions of people came to believe he was the same man they saw on screen, even when those who knew him personally claimed otherwise. Number 3, Robert Mitchum, the king of cool. Few actors embodied Hollywood cool more completely than Robert Mitchum. With his relaxed demeanor, distinctive voice, and unforgettable performances in films such as The Night of the Hunter, Cape Fear, and Out of the Past, Mitchum became one of the most recognizable stars of his era. Part of his appeal came from his reputation as an outsider. He often appeared indifferent to fame, mocked Hollywood's self-importance, and cultivated an image of a man who played by his own rules. Even a highly publicized marijuana arrest in 1948 failed to derail his career, strengthening his image as a rebellious figure who existed outside the Hollywood system. Jerry Lewis, however, believed there was another side to Mitchum that audiences rarely saw. According to accounts from colleagues, crew members, and later biographers, Mitchum's private behavior sometimes clashed sharply with the anti-establishment image that made him famous. Stories from film sets and social gatherings described racial remarks and attitudes that surprised many who expected something very different from the actor's public persona. Several accounts focused on productions during the 1950s and 1960s, where co-workers later recalled conversations and behavior that contradicted the easygoing, rebellious character Mitchum projected to fans. For Lewis, the most revealing aspect was not simply the behavior itself, but how effectively Mitchum's carefully crafted image shielded him from criticism. Lewis reportedly felt that audiences viewed Mitchum's unpredictability as part of his charm. As a result, actions that might have seriously damaged another actor's reputation were often dismissed as simply being Mitchum. In Lewis's view, the persona became a form of protection that lasted for decades. Number 2, Richard Widmark, the liberal hero. Next was Richard Widmark, an actor whose career became closely associated with justice, morality, and social conscience. After his breakout role in Kiss of Death, Widmark evolved into one of Hollywood's most respected dramatic actors, frequently portraying principled men confronting difficult ethical questions. His role in Judgment at Nuremberg especially reinforced his reputation as a defender of fairness and human rights. To audiences, Widmark represented moral courage. According to Jerry Lewis, however, the man behind the screen image was more complicated than the characters he portrayed. Having known Widmark through decades of Hollywood events and professional circles, Lewis believed there was a significant difference between the progressive ideals audiences associated with him and the attitudes some colleagues claimed to have witnessed in private. According to accounts that surfaced over the years, the gap between Richard Widmark's screen image and private reputation became one of the most striking examples Jerry Lewis discussed. Widmark built a career portraying principled men, lawyers, prosecutors, and heroes who stood for justice and moral responsibility. To moviegoers, he represented integrity. Yet Lewis believed that some of Widmark's private views stood in sharp contrast to the characters audiences admired. Former colleagues, biographers, and industry insiders later described comments and attitudes that conflicted with the progressive image his films had helped create. According to these accounts, the difference was not limited to a single incident, but appeared repeatedly across decades. The contradiction was most noticeable because of Judgment at Nuremberg, the acclaimed 1961 film in which Widmark portrayed a prosecutor confronting the horrors of racial persecution. The performance became one of the defining moments of his career and convinced many viewers that the actor personally shared the ideals expressed by his character. Lewis reportedly found that assumption troubling. In his view, audiences often confused a powerful performance with a personal belief system. The fact that Widmark had played such morally serious roles made the contrast with later accounts of his private behavior feel even more dramatic. As years passed and more people spoke openly about their experiences, a more complicated picture emerged. Many who had worked with Widmark described him as a talented and dedicated actor, but some also claimed that his private attitudes did not always align with the values promoted by his most famous films. For Lewis, that was the central disappointment. He admired Widmark's talent and considered some of his performances genuinely important works of cinema. However, he believed that artistic excellence and personal conviction were not always the same thing. Number 1, Rock Hudson, the star built on secrets. No figure on Jerry Lewis's list better illustrated Hollywood's ability to create and protect a public image than Rock Hudson. For decades, Hudson represented the ideal leading man, handsome, charming, and effortlessly romantic. Standing 6'5", he became one of the biggest stars of the 1950s and 1960s through films such as Giant, Pillow Talk, and Lover Come Back. Hudson's success placed him at the very top of Hollywood's hierarchy. Audiences saw him as the embodiment of traditional American masculinity, and his on-screen chemistry with actresses such as Doris Day helped make him one of the era's most beloved box office attractions. Behind that image, however, existed a reality that remained hidden for most of his career. Hudson was gay, and in the Hollywood of that era, revealing that truth could have destroyed everything he had built. With the help of powerful agent Henry Wilson, a carefully managed public persona was created to protect his career and keep his private life out of public view. When Hudson died from AIDS-related complications in 1985, the revelation transformed how many people viewed his life and career. Suddenly, audiences realized that one of Hollywood's greatest romantic icons had spent decades concealing a fundamental part of his identity. According to Lewis, however, that was not the only hidden aspect of Hudson's life. Over the years, stories from colleagues, crew members, and industry insiders suggested that Hudson privately held views and attitudes that differed significantly from the warm, approachable image audiences knew. Lewis believed those contradictions were largely overlooked because public attention became focused almost entirely on the tragedy surrounding Hudson's final years. What made Hudson's story especially complex was the layered nature of his secrecy. The same system that protected one part of his private life also shielded other aspects of his personality from public scrutiny. As a result, the public came to know only a carefully edited version of the man behind the movie star. For Lewis, Hudson's career served as perhaps the ultimate example of Hollywood's power to construct an image so convincing that audiences rarely questioned what might exist beneath it. For Jerry Lewis, the story of Rock Hudson was complicated. He understood the immense pressure Hudson faced while hiding a fundamental part of his identity in an era that could have destroyed his career. Lewis sympathized with that struggle, but he also believed that sympathy should not erase other aspects of a person's behavior that colleagues and associates had documented over the years. Across 7 decades in Hollywood, Lewis witnessed something he felt audiences rarely saw: the difference between public image and private reality. He watched stars build careers on carefully crafted personas while revealing very different sides of themselves behind closed doors. The 5 actors he discussed represented that contradiction in different ways. There was the respected Western hero whose private beliefs reportedly conflicted with his gentlemanly image. the Oscar-winning everyman whose reputation for decency faced challenges from later accounts, the rebellious king of cool whose outsider persona allegedly shielded him from scrutiny, the morally serious leading man whose private views were said to contradict the ideals of his most famous roles, and finally, the romantic icon whose life was built around layers of carefully guarded secrets. Lewis spoke about these stories because he believed silence protected hypocrisy. His friendship with Sammy Davis Jr. gave him a perspective on Hollywood that many of his contemporaries never had, and he felt a responsibility to share what he had witnessed. Whether one agrees with Lewis's conclusions or not, his message remained consistent. Talent and fame should not place anyone beyond examination. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Which revelation surprised you the most? Were any of these stories new to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look into Hollywood's hidden history, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.